You live by breathing in as much as you live by breathing out. The breathing out is part of breathing in. You cannot breathe in if you stop breathing out. You cannot live if you stop dying. The man who has understood what his life is allows death to happen. He welcomes. He dies each moment, and each moment he is resurrected. His cross and his resurrection are continuously happening as a process. He dies to the past each moment, and he is again and again born into the future. If you look into life, you will be able to know what death is. If you understand what death is, only then you are able to understand what life is. They are organic. Ordinarily, out of fear, we have created a division. We think life is good, death is bad. We think life has to be desired and death to be avoided. We think somehow we have to protect ourselves against death. This absurd idea creates endless miseries in your life. Because a person who protects himself against death becomes incapable of living. He is the person who is afraid of exhaling. Then he cannot inhale. Then he is stuck. Then he simply drags. His life is no more a flow. His life is no more a river. If you really want to live, you have to be ready to die. Who is afraid of death in you? Life is afraid of death. It is not possible. How life can be afraid of its own integral process? Something else is afraid in you. The ego is afraid in you. Life and death are not opposites. Ego and death are opposites. Life and death are not opposites. Ego and life are opposites. Ego is against both life and death. The ego is afraid to live. The ego is afraid to die. It is afraid to live because each effort, each step towards life brings death closer. If you live, you are coming closer to die. The ego is afraid to die, hence it is afraid to live also. The ego simply drags. There are many people who are neither alive nor dead. This is worse than anything. A man who is fully alive is full of death also. That is the meaning of Jesus on cross. It has not been really understood. Jesus carrying his own cross. And he says to his disciples, you will have to carry your own cross. The meaning of Jesus carrying his own cross is nothing but this, very simple. That everybody has to carry his death continuously. And everybody has to die each moment. Everybody has to be on the cross, because that is the only way to live fully, totally. Whenever you come to a total moment of aliveness, suddenly you will see death also there. In love it happens. In love, life comes to a climax. And hence people are afraid of love. I have been continuously surprised by people who come to me and say they are afraid of love. What is the fear of love? Because when you really love somebody, your ego starts slipping and melting. You cannot love with the ego. The ego becomes a barrier, and you would like to drop the barrier. And the ego says, this is going to be a death. Beware. The death of the ego is not your death. The death of the ego is really your possibility to live. The ego is just a dead crust around you. It has to be broken and thrown away. It naturally comes into being. Just as a traveler passes, dust collects on his clothes, on his body. And he has to take a bath to get rid of the dust. As we move in time, dust collects of experiences, of knowledge, of lived life, of past. That dust becomes our ego. Accumulated, it becomes a crust around you. It has to be broken and thrown away. One has to take a bath continuously, every day, in fact every moment, so that this crust never becomes a prison. The ego is afraid to love, because in love life comes to a peak. But whenever there is a peak of life, there is also a peak of death. They go together. In love, you die and you are reborn. The same happens when you come to meditate or to pray, or when you come to a master to surrender. The ego creates all sorts of difficulties, rationalizations, not to surrender. Think about it, brood about it, be clever about it. When you come to a master again, the ego becomes suspicious, doubtful, creates anxiety. Again you are coming to life, to a flame, where death will also be as much alive as life. Let it be remembered that death and life both become a flame together. They are never separate. If you are very, very minimally alive, at the minimum, then you can see death and life separate. The closer you come to the peak, they start coming closer. At the very apex, they meet and become one. In love, in meditation, in trust, in prayer, wherever life becomes total, death is there. Without death, life cannot become total. But the ego always thinks in divisions, in dualities. It divides everything. Existence is indivisible. It cannot be divided. You were a child, then you became young. Can you demark the line when you became young? Can you demark the point in time where suddenly you were no more a child and you became young? One day you become old. Can you demark the line when you became old? Processes cannot be demarked. Exactly the same happens when you are born. Can you demark when you are born? When life really starts? Does it start when the child starts breathing? And the doctor spanks the child and the child starts breathing. Then life is born? Or when the child got into the womb, the mother became pregnant, the child was conceived, then life started. or even before that. When life exactly starts, it is a non-ending and a process of no beginning. It never starts. When a person is dead, when the breathing stops, then a person is dead. Many yogis have proved it now on scientific grounds that they can stop breathing and they are still alive and they can come back. So stopping of the breathing cannot be the end.